Okay. Welcome everyone as we begin learning Torah Hashem, Ezra Hashem Yisbarach. As always, we begin first with our appreciation to TorahAnytime.com for its magnificent worldwide platform, as well as appreciation to Kol HaLashon. We have two sponsors. Shiur is sponsored this week by a Talmud anonymously in honor of the Shiur, and also sponsored by my dear longtime Talmud, A.B. Spry and family, in honor of the engagement of their grandson, Isser Zev Spry, to Yoel Mahadab, that their zivik should be Oila Yafazain, and they should be Baina Bayisnem of Yisrael, L'Shem U'L'Sefares. We also learn in loving memory of my uncle who was buried today at the age of 99, Reb Gabriel ben Reb Eli Mordechai, or Eliyahu Mordechai HaKoyen Meza. Shama should have an aliyah and should be a Melis Yosher for the whole family. So Yaakov tells Yosef, Vani bevoyi mipadan, when I came from Padan, Mesa Rachel lai Rachel passed away, the Ekvareh Hashem, and I didn't take her to the Maras HaMachpelah. I buried her there on the derech to Beis Lechem. And here, Yaakov is explaining, I know that you have a tain on me. I'm telling you to bring me all the way to the Maras HaMachpelah, and I didn't bring your mother to the Maras HaMachpelah. So Rashi says, I buried her there in order Shetehei le'ezra lebaneha, that in future generations she will assist her children. Rachel mevaka al baneha. So it's interesting that the Frierdiker Munkacher Rebbe, the Heilige Minchas Elazar, used to tell over this story. Minchas Elazar is a very, very reliable source. He used to tell over this true story from the Rebbe, Reb Mordechai Chernobyl. Reb Mordechai Chernobyl, Zech Tzadik Levracha, Schus Yagan Aleinu, was put into prison by the wicked Russians. And at the time, the Tsar was very wicked, and even all the pressure of world Jewry wasn't enough to get the Tsar to free the Chernobyl Rebbe. However, with the pressure, they finally got that they allowed him to have his talis and tefillin. They allowed him to have kosher food. And it was very important to him. He used to give a stipend for many poor families on Thursday. So the Russian government allowed him to continue giving his tzedakah. And they would bring the money to a window in the jail, and families would come to the jail, and on Thursday he would give them a stipend for Shabbos. And the Munkacher Rebbe said that one Thursday a woman came and said to the Rebbe, I'm not here for money. I just want to respectfully ask the Rebbe a question. Something's bothering me. So the Rebbe said to her, ask, and if I can answer, I'll answer. And she quoted a Gemara that we just learned 5 days ago in the Global Daf Yomi. She said, the Gemara says that the daughter of Nechunya Nechunya Chayfer Shichin, fell into a big pit. And they went to the great Reb Chanina ben Daisa, and the first hour he said she's okay, the second hour he said she's okay, the third hour she's came out of the bar. And the Gemara tells us, they asked Reb Chanina ben Daisa, how did he know? So he said, I'm not a Navi, I'm not a Ben Navi, just I know that which her father was mitzvah, was pained himself to be moisen nefesh, to provide water for the Oilei Regalim, it's impossible that his child, his daughter, would die in the work that he did. So she said, so Rebbe, I don't understand. Your holy father, the Frierdiker Chernobyl Rebbe, and you are very, very, very occupied in Pidyon Shvuyim, in redeeming captives. So how could Hashem allow you to languish in a jail when you and your father spent all your time being paid the Jewish captives? So he looked at her and he said to her that, my child, that's a very good question, and it bothered me as well. That's what he told her. So she said to him, Rebbe, I give you a blessing that you should be freed from jail today. It's very strange. And the woman left, and inexplicably that day he was freed from jail. So he prayed. It says that Rav Mordechai Chernobyl, this is all from the Minchas Elazar, from the Frierdiker ben Daisa Rebbe. Rav Mordechai Chernobyl prayed and prayed, and it was revealed to him that the woman that came was Rachel Imenu. And the question that she asked was to be Ma'ora Rachmei Shemayim, and she caused that he should be freed from jail. The Mekacher Rebbe says that the idea that Rachel Mevaka al Banea continued even to our time, even to the Chernobyl Rebbe. So I was just thinking that the name Rachel is interesting, a acronym for Rachmana Litzlan. The merciful one should save. And it's interesting that became an expression by Klal Yisrael, Rachmana Litzlan. And it probably is what Rachel stands for, because throughout the generations, Rachel was Mevaka al Baneha. Vayishtachu Yisrael al Rosh Hamita. So this, it means that Yaakov was sick. It says, Hinei avicha choleh, behold, your father was sick. It's brought down that he was the first one to get sick before dying, and that's the Hinei, it's a Chiddush, Hinei avicha chayla, and it says that Yaakov bowed down to the front of the bed. He turned around and bowed down to the head of the bed. Now who's he bowing down to? So Rashi says, Hofach atzmai litzad hashchina, he turned himself towards the Shechina, Mikan Amru Shashchina Lamala Mirashaisav Shel Chayil, that the Shechina is at the head of the bed of the Chayil. Now this has interesting halachic ramifications. In Shulchan Aruch, in Yoredeya, Siman Shin Lamed Hey, first of all it says over there that you don't sit higher, as the Ramah says, you don't sit higher than the chayla. If the chayla is lying down, you shouldn't sit higher than the chayla, so that you shouldn't be sitting higher than the shechina. Then it says an interesting thing. The lashon of Shulchan Aruch is Elamis-atef v'yoshev, you should robe yourself and sit, she'ashchina shayra Lamala mirashoysa shel chayla. Now, by the way, the Aruch HaShulchan brings down that you should never sit even equal by the head of the chayla, because there the shechina is there. And he says by a Rashi, you don't sit by the feet of the chayla, because by the foot of a chayla that's a Rashi is the Malach HaMavos. But it says in halacha, this is halacha psuka, that when you go to a chayla, you should be misatif, which means you should dress up when you go to a chayla. Now why? So you could learn two ways. You could learn the way it's mashma, that it's in honor of the shechina. So since the shechina is by the chayla, you should put on a hat, you should put on a jacket. Or you could learn it's in honor of the sick person. You're going to make the sick person visit, so you want to show respect for the sick person, so you dress up. What would be a halachic nafkamina if the sick person is blind? If the sick person is blind, he doesn't see that you're dressed up. But if it's in honor of the shechina, then you dress up in honor of shechina. It's mashma that it's in the honor of the shechina, but nobody says it clear. But here's an interesting thing. Reb Shamshin Pincus, Zechet Tzadik Levracha Zchus Yagan Aleinu, says that one of the places where there's most concentrated shechina is a hospital. The hospital that has like a Jewish hospital, like Laniado Hospital, right? Or even Maimonides, which is full of Yidden, and the shechina is by every chayla, it's full of shechina. That's Reb Shamshin Pincus. So I wondered, and a Beis Medrash is not. Anyway, you have a Beis Medrash here in Lakewood. This Beis Medrash has 1,000 Yungalite learning. This one has 1,000 Yungalite. You go to Lutsk, there's 400 people learning. And that's not full of shechina. Afilu echad yoshev ve'osek b'Torah shechina kenegdai. So why is he talking about a chayla and not the shechina, and not a Beis Medrash? It's possible that the shechina by the bed of a chayla is more concentrated than by one who is learning. It's an interesting idea, an interesting theme, that it's possible, because it doesn't say that when you go to learn you're misatif. You have to robe specially when you're learning. It says that when you go to a hospital, when you go to a chayla, you're misatif. It seems to be that there's a greater concentration by the bed of a chayla than even in the Beis Medrash. This concept of more concentrated shechina, interesting thing, this concept of more concentrated shechina, on Monday night, I left early. I wasn't here for Maariv because I had Sheva Brachas for my nephew, Yehuda Aryeh, with his new wife, Chanaleah, Zivik Shiviyah Yafazain. So I spoke about this concept that especially a Ben Torah that comes out of yeshiva to get married. And he gets married. Till this point, anything that distracts him from his learning is an enemy. It's a Yetzer Hara. Right? So for example, if he's learning and somebody talks to him about the Mets, the Yankees, right? It's a distraction. It's an enemy. All of a sudden he has a kala, and she distracts him. She's not an enemy. It takes a mental shift, a mental alteration. There are mental shifts that the young men and young women have to do. For example, I used to talk to the seminary girls. Until you get married, you dress according to what makes you feel good. If you like yellow, then you like to buy dresses that are yellow. If you like drop waist dresses, so then you buy drop waist dresses. All of a sudden now, you have to think, but my chassan hates yellow. It reminds him of eggs. He doesn't like drop waist. She has to make an alteration now on how she dresses. A chassan also has to make an alteration. She said, but you'll say, yeah, but you're right. The wife could be a distraction. Maybe she's a shliach of the Yetzer Hara. So first of all, you have to know that it says, Gadol ha-talmid she-talmid mevir l'dei ma'aseh. Learning is great because it brings us to action. When it comes to, why is Torah great? Because it gets us to live like a proper Jew. That's why there's no din of oisik b'mitzvah patim and a mitzvah by Torah. By other mitzvahs, there's a din of oisik b'mitzvah patim and a mitzvah. You're doing a mitzvah. For example, the Rambam says you're occupied in clearing the snow from in front of the shul so that the old men that come out shouldn't slip. And it comes the end of the Zman Kriya Shema, that if you don't say Kriya Shema, you're going to miss Kriya Shema. Now, if you could do both at the same time, fine. But if not, you're potter. Because you're clearing the snow that people shouldn't get hurt. Isaac b'mitzvah, potter and a mitzvah. But when it comes to a wife, when it comes to Torah, you could be learning Torah, but if it's a mitzvah she'eni yochel lasas ha'yidei acherim, you have to close the Gemara. So a wife is a mitzvah she'eni yochel lasas ha'yidei acherim. Who's gonna attend to the needs of a wife? Somebody else's husband? It's gonna a new wife. But you'll say, but when I learn Torah Shechina Kenegdai, I'm losing the Shechina. It says, Ish v'isha, shalom beineim, Shechina shvir beineim. But it's not just Shechina. It's more Shechina. What's the raya? Remember I told you, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach walked around with a tube of water in his pocket. What did he do with the tube of water? When he came to the house, he would take out the water and straighten out his beard before going in. And when they asked him, most people, they do that when they leave the house. So he said, look, I live with Shalom Bayis with my Rebbetzin, and therefore I have Shechina. So I'm straightening out my beard for the Shechina. But where was Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach coming from? He wasn't coming from Gourmet Glatt. Not Seasons, not Evergreen. He wasn't coming from the arcade. What's it called? Dave and Buster's. He was coming from the Beis Medrash. He's just coming from Shechina. If his beard was good enough for the Beis Medrash, why does he have to straighten it up? The answer is the Shechina of Shalom Bayis is even more than the Shechina of Torah. And Hashem made it that way that a person shouldn't feel, my wife, she's distracting me from my learning. The Shechina of Shalom Bayis is even greater than the Shechina of Torah. Vayemer liYosef, hinei avicha chayla. And they said to Yosef that his father was sick. Actually, the Be'er HaShabbos brings down 10 opinions Who said it to Yosef? Was it Osnas? Was it Ephraim? Was it Menashe? There are 10 opinions. I'm not going to go into it now. But what did he do? Vayikach es shnei banav imay. He took his 2 sons with him, es Menashe ve'es Ephraim. You know, we just learned in the daf this week that there's certain things that are mysteries, right? Chamor by Bar, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and Seh by Hashavas Aveda, why these words are needed, are mysteries of Shas. They're mysteries. There is a sefer written by one of the Gaonim. The Gaonim were people that were before Rashi. You know, we can't even fathom the greatness of Rashi. Before Rashi, before the Rishonim, was an even greater group called the Gaonim. One of the great Gaonim was Rav Achoy, and he wrote a collection of halacha called Shiltus de Rav Achai Gaon. And the great Netziv, the Rosh Hashiva of Volozhin, and the Rav of the town of Volozhin, wrote a Piris on the Shiltus. So in the Shiltus, there's a psak that's one of the mysteries of our literature. Nobody has given an explanation. The Shiltus Rav Achai Gaon writes that b'mitzvahs biker chaylim lo yelech adam levaker chayla levadai. You shouldn't go alone to be mevaker chayla. El yelech im acherim levakrei. Go with other people. Why? Why can't you visit? Why can't you visit a chayla alone? Why should you go with other people? So much so, then the Netziv, in his Pirish on the Shiltus called Hamak Sheila, he writes, and I quote, Da de divrei Rabbeinu, he said it with great respect, you should know the words of our master, Loi Motzasiv, I didn't find, B'shum Sefer, in any source, Merishain ad Achrain, from the Rishainim or the Achrainim, Vuhu Pella. So he writes, it's not in Shulchan Aruch. Why should he say that you shouldn't go to visit someone alone? And we're not knowing this way. So so we all know that one of the great scholars of recent past was the Ragatcha Gaon. Ragatcha Gaon wrote a Sefer Tzofnas Paneach in very cryptic style, and he writes a smach to the Shiltus is from our pasuk, because it says that Vayikach Shnei Vanav Imayas Menashe ves Ephraim, that when Yosef went to visit his father, he didn't go alone. He went with Yosef and Ephraim. And then the Ragatcha says another proof is that the Gemara says that from the pasuk that says Vaydata lahem es haderech asher yelchuva, you should inform Klal Yisrael the way to go. So the Gemara dashens every word of that pasuk. And it says, Yelchu zebikir chayil. And since Yelchu is in the plural, that's a little bit of a smach that one should visit not alone. But you notice the Ragatcha is just giving us sources. He's not giving us a reason. So much so that the great Rav Yosef Engel, in his Sefer Gilyoinei Hashas, which is famous Sefer, writes that the Shiltus doesn't mean that you shouldn't visit alone. Just that one who visits should try to take someone else in order to get another person also to do the great mitzvah and to alleviate more of the tsar of the chayil. But not that you shouldn't go alone, which, is like a desperate attempt to try to understand the shiltas. So, when preparing, sometimes I get flashes because of the schus of such an audience. So I had an idea, and that is the shiltas held. In the laws of Lashon Hara, there are things that we're not allowed to do because it could make us vulnerable to Lashon Hara. For example, you're not supposed to speak to one competitor about another competitor. If there's two pizza shops in the town, you're not allowed to speak to one pizza shop guy about the other pizza shop owner. Because it's likely that that's going to lead to Lashon Hara. Oh yeah, you go to his store. Do you notice that he doesn't put napkins on the table? Do you notice? You notice that he doesn't have sour cream, right? You notice? You don't do that. Another example is, it says you're not supposed to talk even good about a person, because if you start talking good about the person, somebody will say, yeah, but do you know how he behaves at home? Good. Right? So it dawned on me that it's possible that the shiltas felt that when somebody is seriously ill, you shouldn't go and visit him alone. Because in his curiosity to know before he dies, he might ask you, so do you know why this person didn't like me? Or do you know why this family never invited me to simchas? He might, in the end of his life, ask you questions and therefore take another person with you. He'll be embarrassed to ask you with the other person. Now, what made me think about this? You'll say, boy, Rabbi Weiss, you have a good imagination. Well, first of all, I'm a Rav. But what made me think about this is that's why Yosef took, the Ragachev brings a raya, that Yosef took Ephraim and Menashe. That's why Yosef took Ephraim and Menashe. Because he didn't want Yaakov to ask, so tell me, Yosef, before I leave this world, I really want to know, what really happened? They brought me your cloak full of blood. What really happened? That's why it says that for 17 years, Yosef was not alone with Yaakov, because he didn't want him to ask, so what happened? And then if he would tell him, he might curse the brothers. He don't want to do that. So therefore, don't go alone. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that if you look in the Aruch HaShulchan in Siman Shin Lamed Hey, the Aruch HaShulchan says, it's an interesting Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says that a man could visit a woman, and a woman could visit a man. But they should be careful not to have yichud, not to be alone. And I could hear that the shiltas was worried that people won't be so I'm going to visit them, but they're sick now. What are they going to do? So therefore he says, go with another person to make sure that there shouldn't be yichud. These are two possibilities over here. Now, when we've opened up the discussion about Bikur Chaylim, Bikur Chaylim, the Gemara in the Darim on Daf Mem Amud Aleph tells us unbelievable rewards for Bikur Chaylim. One of the rewards of Bikur Chaylim is Kol HaMavaker Es HaChayla Nitzel Medina Shel Gehenna. Now, to be saved from Gehenna, that's big stuff. Because if we're honest, we know we're not lily white. How many times do we make a bracha and say Hashem's name without any kavanah at all? How many times we could have learned and we didn't learn? How much money we could have given to tzedakah and we didn't give? How many times did we move muksa things? I mean, there's so many sins. And Gehenna is very hot. So to have something to save us from Gehenna. So for example, you have over here the pasuk me Asher Shmeina Lachmai, and the Chavetz Chaim brings it down in his Sefer Torah Sabayis, which is in the 3rd volume of the Kol Kisvei. It's actually from the Medrash Talpiyos that Asher stands by the door of Gehenna and doesn't let people in that learn regular Mishnayos. That's me Asher Shmeina, and Shmeina is the same letters as Mishnah. So that's Nitzel Medinish again. It's a fire insurance. But there's another fire insurance. It's a Beferish Gemara in the Darim. Kol ha'mavaker es ha'chayla Nitzel Medinish again. Whoever visits a sick person is saved from Gehenna. Now, the Parsha says it's a simple midah keneged midah. You go visit a sick person and you alleviate their fever, or you alleviate their suffering, so midah keneged midah, Hashem will alleviate our suffering. But the Divrei Shul says something more. The Divrei Shul says that one of the, if you're worthy of it, and you're smart enough not to scare the sick person, one of the purposes of visiting the sick is to recommend to the chayla to do tshuva. Because, you know what they say, avirus is avirus. It says, avirus is avirus. It comes from avirus. Sickness comes from sin. So if a person goes to be Vakar Chayla and he could say, you know, maybe you should give more tzedakah, maybe you should find more time to learn, learning protects. And so that you're saving him from Gehenna, and therefore you're saved from Gehenna. And that explains, you know, the mitzvah is called a very interesting name. It's not called visiting the sick. It's called examining the sick. Bikur chayim. So the simple reason is a very important reason, is that when you go to visit a sick person, you're supposed to make an inspection to see what they need. Some cholim are bored. They could use a good book. Some are embarrassed. They need a good robe. Some are downright hungry. They can't stand the hospital food. They need a good soup. They need a good steak sandwich if they could eat it. Right? So that's bikur, that's examination. It's a big part of the mitzvah. But the Divrei Shul says bikur also means examine the person if you could recommend to them something spiritual that they could work on. That's also a big part of the mitzvah. Vayar Yisrael es b'nei Yosef. Yisrael saw the b'nei Yosef. Vayomer mi eila. Who are these? Well, what kind of a question is that? I mean, we know that Ephraim learned with Yaakov all the time. What kind of a question is mi eila? Who's are these? He knew that they were his Einiklach. Vayomer Yosef el aviv bonayim asher nasan li elikim bazeh. We know he showed the ksuva that he had with Asnas. showed up the Kameya that says Ani Asnas Bas Hina Bas Yaakov. So Rashi says that there's another story over here. Rashi says that he was going to bless them, but Nistalku Mimenu Shchina, but the Shchina departed. Why? Lefisha Osid Yeravim ben Avat, because the wicked Yeravim ben Avat was going to come Lotzeis me Ephraim, and Yehu ben Nimshi would come from Menashe. And that's why he said, who are they? So there's a famous sefer on the Rambam called the Mishnah L'Melech. It's learned in all yeshivas. The Mishnah L'Melech, Zeich Tzadik L'Bracha, Schusi Young Elena wrote a sefer on Chumash called the Parshas Drachim. So in the Parshas Drachim, he says that we all know that on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we learn the story of Yishmael. Why? Because it's a big thing that we say to Hashem, Hashem, I know you know that I'm going to fall again next year. But you don't punish ahead. You only punish B'asher Usham. You only punish now. And therefore you can't look at Yeravim ben Avat. You can't look at Yehu ben Nimshi. Yishmael, you didn't look at Arafat. You didn't look at Hamas. You didn't look at homicide bombers. So you don't look at that. Then the Mishnah Melech adds an interesting caveat. He says, Meruba mida toiva memidas peraniyos. But by good, you do look ahead. And therefore, don't forget that from Ephraim will come Yeshua ben Nun. Now, what's the proof that by good Hashem looks ahead? We're going to learn next week already. It's unbelievable how time is moving. We're going to learn next week Shmais. So remember when Moshe Rabbeinu killed the Mitzri with the Shem HaMeforish, it says, Vayifan kai v'chai, he looked this way and that way, v'yarki einish. And Rashi says he looked at the future of this Mitzri and he saw that throughout the ages until the end of time will never come something good from this Mitzri. Because if something good would have came, he wouldn't have killed him. Now, of course, we execute in Bezdin, because Bezdin doesn't have a crystal ball. But Moshe Rabbeinu was executing with the Shem HaMeforish. That means he's executing like Hashem. When it comes to that, Hashem looks for the good. So he had to make sure there was no future good. But over here, there was good. Now, it's in the words in the pasuk, because V'yar Yisrael es b'nei Yosef, Yisrael saw b'nei, and the Shechina left, because b'nei stands for Yeravim ben Navat and Yehu ben Nimshi. They're both Yud Beis Nun. Right? Well, Yehu ben Nimshi and Yeravim ben Navat. But then it says, Vayomer Yosef avav Bonai. Don't forget Yeshua ben Nun. That's also Yud Beis Nun. Yeshua ben Nun. And you don't look for bad, you look ahead for good. However, I want to tell you something that's serious. There is an area that Hashem looks ahead and takes away from us. I said this on Shavuos. It says that the backdrop of Har Sinai was Choshech, Onon, Arafel, and Oshin. So what was the backdrop of Har Sinai? Darkness, afela, deep black, smoke, dark clouds. Is that the backdrop for Torah? Torah's Ar! It says, Vayar Elikim Esa'ar. Esa'ar is Begematria Bat Torah. When Moshe Rabbeinu was born, Kalabayis Nismalayar, the whole house filled with light. Ein Or Ela Torah. So why was the backdrop smoke and blackness? I looked for this question many years. I inherited from my father the Shulzinger Chumash, which in the 6th volume of the Shulzinger Chumash is the Tosfos Harash on Chumash. Tosfos Harash on Chumash says, why wasn't the backdrop of Har Sinai light and sun and strobes of light, maybe swirling bright angels? And the Rosh says it was supposed to be that way. But we lost it because right after we would sin with the golden calf. It's an obvious question. But Hashem only punishes B'asher Husham. How could he take away the light because we're going to sin with the golden calf? So from here we learn something very important. Hashem won't punish us for what we're going to do later. But he also won't give us the geschmack of Torah. He won't give us that light, that Siskite. And that's why if a person comes to learn and then goes home and yells at his wife, he's not getting the geschmack of Torah. If a person goes to a shiur and learns Bava Kama, and then is not erlich in business, he's not going to enjoy Bava Kama. You want to have the geschmack of Torah? Then you have to walk the walk and talk the talk. In this area, Hashem doesn't only go B'asher Husham. It's a very important lesson. V'ani nasati l'choshchem achad alachecha asher lekachti miyad ha'emoiri b'charvi u'b'kashti. Yaakov tells Yosef, I'm giving you an extra portion, and this extra portion I took myself from the Amorites with my sword and my bow. Okay, very nice. Except the Targum Onkelos says it's not really referring to a sword and a bow. The Targum says the sword and the bow is bitzlosi or b'va'usi, with my prayers and my petitions. So we all say, that's the famous word, that what Yaakov really used was prayer. It wasn't might, it was prayer. So Rishvadron asks a kasha. And this kasha is so reminiscent of the Sfas Emes's kasha. On the Megillah Esther, because I know everybody's thinking about Purim now. You know, that's the next stop, right? I mean, we have Tu B'Shvat, but Gedalia is thinking about Purim. Right? He's already preparing his Shalach Monas theme, you know. So his wife is thinking about hanging up Ham and Tashin in front of the house, you know. So it says in the Megillah, the famous pasuk, which we all say out loud by Havdalah, and the Gemara says, what does it mean? Ayra simcha v'sasim likar. The Gemara says, Ayra zu Taira, simcha zu yamtiv, sasin zu mila, and yikar zu tefillin. So ask the Sfas Emes, so then say it. Why doesn't it say, like Yehuda Ma'isa Torah, yamtiv, mila v'tefillin? Why do you have to speak in code? So the Sfas Emes gives a beautiful teretz that they always had Torah, they always had Yom Tov, they always had Milah, and they always had Tefillin. But after the miracle, Torah became a light. Mila became a sasan. Tefillin became a yakar. So Rav Shvadron says the same kasha over here. Rav Shvadron says, I don't understand. Why didn't the pasuk say, if it meant tzlaisi uvusi, so why didn't the Torah say, Asher lakachti miyada amori b'tfilasi ubesachanunai, my prayer and my supplication? What's this charbi ukashti? Say what you mean. So Rav Shvadron quotes the Brisker Rav during the War of Independence, the War of 1948. The War of 1948, everybody was talking about the Israeli Air Force, about the military. He says, you know where the battle was won? It was won by the Tfilas, and he quoted Gedolim at that time, Rav Chechik, Rav Bluch. That's where the Charbi and the Kashti is camouflage. It's not the Cherev and the Keshes. It's the Tzlaisi of Usi. It doesn't say Tzlaisi of Usi to tell you that which you see, the sword and the bow, it's not really the sword and the bow. Elav Arechav, Elav Asusim, these come with their chariots, these come with the horses, but Vanachnu B'Shem Hashem Alikeinu Naskir. It's Hakol Kol Yaakov. Yadayim is Yaday Esav. Yaakov tells us, he tells the Shvat, Me'e'os will gather, V'agidu lachem es asher yikra eschem achris hayamin. And I'll tell you about the end of the days. So we know Bikesh Yaakov Liglois is a case. He wanted to reveal the end, when the Mashiach will come. V'nistalka mimen. So there's an interesting medrash. The medrash says, Bikesh Yaakov Liglois is a case. He wanted to reveal, and Hashem told him, Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lo Yaakov Yomah Shemcha Kiyam Yisrael. You can't reveal it because you're not Yaakov anymore, you're Yisrael. What does that mean? The Kelos Yaakov says, Mamash, a beautiful pshat. The Kelos Yaakov says that Bizman Shi Yisrael Oisim Ritzayne Shel Mokum, they're called Yisrael. What does it say about the coming of Mashiach? So it says, Zachu Achishena. If you merit, I'll quicken it. Lo Zachu, if you don't merit, then it's going to come Be'ita. And therefore Hashem said, I can't reveal you the case. Maybe Klal Yisrael will act like Yisrael, and they'll merit that it should come quicker. It all depends on you. I can't tell you a case. Because Zachu Achishena, if you merit, it's going to come quicker. The Maisa is, there's a famous Yalkut Shimoni. That's why the Chazon Ish recommends people that they should always use their Hebrew names. And we know that that's a big minig Yisrael. One of the three reasons that we were saved in Mitzrayim is because we didn't change our names. But there are people, for my example, when I was born, on my birth certificate it says Mark M. My next brother, Reb Ruven's Aiden, says Arthur J. Because my father was still afraid of the Nazis. Still afraid of the Nazis. I know it sounds strange to people. I was born in 1958. That's 13 years after my father was liberated, but he was still afraid. Do you know, if you go to the Turo Shul in Rhode Island, you'll see by the Bima, there's a tunnel. They preserved the tunnel. Because when they built the Shul, they were still afraid of the Inquisition. It's a known fact. But now that we could use our Jewish names, we should use it. Chazon Ish says that in a name, Shem is 340. Tzinar is also 340. One's name is a pipeline to bring down bracha from heaven. So you want to use your Jewish name. Now, in the Shiftei Kah, it says that Bikesh Yaakov Liglois Tzakates, because he saw that in none of the names of the Shvatim is there a Ches or a Tes. Not one. No, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, there's no Ches, there's no Tes. Check it out. So he said, there's no Chet. I could reveal it to them. But then he saw that in none of the names is a Kuf or a Tzaddik. In none of the names is there a Kuf or a Tzaddik. I can't reveal the Kates. Now it's interesting, 3 of those 4 letters are found by Yitzchak. Yitzchak has a Kuf, it has a Tzaddik, it has a Ches. But there's no Tes in all the Avos and the Imahos. There's no Tes in all the 12 Shvatim. And this causes a problem, because the Choshen that has the names has to be able to flash out answers from the Urim V'Tumim. So how do you flash out a Tes? There's certain letters that are not on when you have to press with the phone as a keyboard. So I believe there's no Q. Anybody know? On a telephone. Yeah. There's no Q. So no Z and no Q. Right? And so therefore, if you have to use something with a Z or a Q, they have to give you, there's a whole different way to do it. Right? So where's the test? Where's the test on the Choshen? It had the Shvatim. It had the Yavas. But then where's the test? So the Mamloi is asked this question. And Mamloi says that on the Choshen it also says Shiftei Yeshurun. And the word Shiftei is a test. You see how, for example, the only Shevet that has an ayin is Shimon. None of the Shvatim have an ayin except Shimon. And it's because of the sin of the Nasi of Shimon, Zimri ben Saul. So Shimon is Sham Avain. Over there was a sin, and ayin stands for Aveira. That's why it's brought down in the Medrash that there was never a good king or a Navi from Shimon. No, never. Now, wow. Yisachar Chamor Garim. Yisachar is a bony donkey. So it's brought down that Yisachar was caused, like Rama, by a donkey. There's 2 different pshatim on how Yisachar was caused by a donkey. The famous pshat is that we know that Leah, in exchange for the mandrakes, for the dudaim that she gave to Rachel, Rachel awarded her night to Leah. But how did Leah know when Yaakov was coming home? So it says that when Yaakov came home on his donkey, it brayed, and Leah heard the donkey bray, and she came out and said, Sachar secharticha bedudai b'neich, and therefore it says, Yisachar chamor garim, was caused by a donkey. That's a Kain and Balitois. But there's another pshat in the Medrash that you have to know, Dudan, mandrakes. There's a Medrash that when the mandrakes are pulled out from the ground, they make a scream that could kill animals. What happened is that Reuven tied his donkey to some mandrakes. He didn't know they were mandrakes. And the donkey pulled to try to loosen from the being tied, pulled it out of the ground, and they screamed, and the donkey died. So when Reuven came back and found the donkey dead with these mandrakes pulled out of the ground, he understood that these must be mandrakes, which caused fertility, and therefore he gave it to his mother, who gave it to Rachel in exchange. So this donkey that revealed that it was mandrakes, Yisachar Chamor Garam, Yisachar, that came about because he traded the mandrakes for the night, and that night Yisachar was conceived, was caused by this donkey that died. Two different shots. There's a lot of Torah over here that they say that Chamor Garam, that why did it have to come through the donkey dying? Because if a person wants to have hatzlacha with learning the chamar, which is the chumrius, the materialism, some of the materialism has to die. You want to have success in learning, you have to be able to put aside, if you're always looking for the next pleasure, you're not going to succeed in a career of learning. You have to have the chumrius die. Also, it's brought down that Yisachar Chamar Garam, Chamar is Reish Mem Ches, is 248. You want to know what makes a person a Yisachar? When he realizes that the learning equals all 248. There's 248 positive commandments. When he learns that his learning is equal to all 248 mitzvahs, that Talmud Torah is Keneged Kulam, then he becomes a Ben Torah. Can't believe it's already 57 minutes into the Shiur. I want to tell you that Mirz Hashem, on Thursday, I record a Shiur it's called For the Shabbos Table, due to the benevolence of the Rubin family, and that's usually available by Thursday night, so check that out. Also, I put some old shiurim on YouTube, besides from Vayechi from 2013. I also have a shiur called Smile, It's the Torah Thing to Do, and other shiurim, short shiurim. Check it out on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. Also, we don't have a sponsor for next week, so please, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Thank you very much for joining us. And of course, we just started the 6th parak in Bava Kama, HaKaines. If you want to join our Zoom Daf family, just go at 8 p.m. to zoomdaf.com, and we'd love to have you join us. Thank you for coming, and have a wonderful Shabbos.